The Real Reform for ECD, a broad-based alliance advocating for holistic, well-funded, inclusive and quality early childhood development services, has raised concerns about the 2024 medium-term budget policy statement, lack of clarity on plans to invest in universal access to quality early childhood development. They're calling on government to fast-track the implementation of the Basic Education's 2030 Strategy for ECD, saying it would close the school readiness gap for children from poorer households and reduce childcare burdens for 2 million women, promoting their economic participation. We now speak to its coordinator, Tshepo Mantje. Welcome to Newzroom Afrika, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for platforming Real Reform for Early Childhood Development.
Now, firstly, South Africa's educational landscape is already marred by significant inequalities. Could you paint a picture of the current landscape?
Yes, people can look around their own communities, their own townships, and see the state of young children particularly. Before we even get to the state of education, I think it's important to interrogate the state of young children, particularly those between the ages of 0 and 6 years old. The recent published Child Gauge published that over 70% of young children are living in extremely poor households. We find that 1 in 4 children experience severe malnutrition in this country, which results in stunting, meaning that young children are not developing well physically, reaching their milestones. We have other issues presenting themselves in basic education, such as 80% of grade 4s not being able to read for meaning. We have high rates of dropouts. And a lot of these are results of early childhood development sector not being accessible to all young children and creating that fundamental foundation that is required for lifelong well-being.
Now, our government's reluctance to prioritize progressive spending and strategic investment has been criticized by human rights bodies such as yourself for hindering socio-economic advancements. Now, in what way will early childhood development be impacted?
Yes. Ms. Chaba, I want to really simplify it for our viewers today. When we're talking about early childhood development, we're talking about the foundation of who we become. When we are building a house, the foundation is one of the most strongest elements that we have to look at. So in South Africa right now, our government and the budget reflects really superficial fixing of the issues we have in the country. We're extending on this metaphor of a house. It's like we're attending to the cracks on the wall. And every year, these cracks show up on our house, and we go to the wall, we go to the wall. And we are here to tell you that, to tell South Africa and the government specifically, that we cannot keep attending to the cracks in the wall, but we have to go to where the foundation is, and that is in early childhood development. And President Cyril Ramaphosa has been saying since 2022 that we're going to expand access to early childhood development. But he keeps using his words, but none of this is reflected in the budgeting of the country. So it's not enough that Minister of Basic Education can make promises to ECD. It's not enough that the President can make promises to ECD. Where it really matters is in the budgeting. And currently, we see that only 0.2% of government's expenditure is going to early childhood development. Again, in the spirit of making this as simple as possible for people. If we have 100 Rand to spend in South Africa, let's say that's the budget, 2 cents is going to early childhood development. 2 cents of 100 Rand in South Africa is going to early childhood development. So you're telling me that the government is serious about early childhood development? Is showing otherwise.
Yeah, and thank you so much for painting that picture for us. If you could just expand a little bit more for our viewers, in what way, how will government austerity measures amplify inequality?
Yes, what does it really look like? Early childhood, what is happening currently is that we are recognizing that it's the children who are in poor communities that remain outside of adequate early childhood development. We find that only 41% of early childhood development centers are registered currently. Of those 41% that are registered, only 33% of them are receiving a subsidy which is already so low at 17 Rand per child per day. So it seems that, in effect, what is happening, only parents or families that are able to access paid for early childhood development services are able to get those adequate services, meaning that children are starting grade 1 not having any foundational resourcing that was given to them before grade 1, meaning that there is a large gap between young children starting grade 1 who had the ECD center services and those who did not.
Now tell me, Tshepo, what is your message to the government? How can we as a nation build especially a more inclusive, a more prosperous society for future generations?
Yes. I will be quite specific about what we wanted to see and what still should be in this budget. What we're looking at is an increased subsidy, because 17 Rand per child per day, Ms. Chaba, cannot do anything, particularly if you're ring fencing 6.80 Rand for nutrition. Another point is that we need increase in subsidy to reach 1 million more young children, particularly those who are on the child support grant. Because if we are going to make the argument that children in their homes need the child support grant, that should be extended to them getting the subsidy at ECD centers. Another thing is that child support grant to be increased to reach the food poverty line. The child support grant currently is at 530 Rand to support the child in their household. But the food poverty line, it's at 730 Rand. So you can see the large disparity between what is happening and what we have. Also, we are calling for the government to implement a maternal support grant to support women who are expecting a child, because early childhood development actually starts while the mother is still pregnant. What the mother is eating and how they care for themselves really influences how the child is born, the child's birth and early childhood development starting at that point. And then another very, very key one, speaking of nutrition, is for the government to create a nutrition program at ECD centers. If you look at primary schools and high schools, young children in those schools in the basic education system receive meals at the schools, because the Department of Basic Education knows well enough that children cannot learn on empty stomachs. If you're hungry, it affects your learning. The same should be applied at ECD centers. Currently, ECD centers do not have a nutrition program. And the DBE received money from Treasury beginning of the year that is still not currently used and can run the risk of being taken back if this nutrition program is not seen through.
All right. Before I let you go, Tshepo, tell us a little bit more about the Real Reform for ECD.
I would love to.
Oh, please do.
Real Reform for ECD is a movement of people in South Africa who care for young children. So we are not an organization. We are a movement made up of multiple organizations and over 1,000 ECD practitioners around the country who are advocating for holistic quality and services for South Africa. What makes us a little bit unique, I would say, is because our advocacy movement focuses on legislative, policy and regulatory reform. So what we want to see is changes for young children embedded in our laws. Because once it's in our laws, it can stand the test of time. Presidents can come and go, but the Constitution will remain the same. Our laws will remain the same. So we want to see what we are feeling and know about the truth of ECD reflected in our legislative framework.
Wonderful. Love your work. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having us.
All right, that was Real Reform for ECD's coordinator, Tshepo Mantje.